All right.
Did you know that e-file opens on January 26th? It's already passed. Before you submit your tax filing, you may want to hear what our next guest has to say. Andy Phillips is vice president of the Tax Institute at H&R Block, and he's here today to give us some insights on all things taxes, from the one big beautiful bill impact to the value of e-filing. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. You're in Kansas City. Thank you for making it into the office.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. There's been a lot of discussion of the one big beautiful bill since its passage last July.
Right.
Give us a quick refresher on what it is.
So the one big beautiful bill passed, that's right, back in July of 2025, with many provisions going into effect for 2025, meaning they're going to impact tax returns that folks are about to start filing today. Um, And so, what that bill did is two main things for individuals. One, it slightly changed and made permanent a lot of the changes that were passed in what we call the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was the large package passed during President Trump's first term. The other thing it did is it introduced a host of new tax benefits designed for specific folks. Think about people that work for tips or overtime, some new benefits for seniors. So virtually everyone is going to see some impact, but some are definitely going to see a bigger impact than others.
So, how will this bill impact tax filing this year?
So for this year, what we're going to see is that everyone's going to have some level of impact. Like the standard deduction's a little bit bigger, for instance. For folks that have the child tax credit for those children that are under age 17 who are eligible, last year you could get to up to $2,000 per eligible child. Well, this year that increases up to $2,200. Another example, which I just briefly mentioned, are overtime workers and tipped workers may be able to deduct up to a certain amount of that income from federal tax, maybe even from their state tax, depending on the state they live in. So a lot of changes. Seniors are going to get a new additional deduction. If they're 65 or older, they'll be eligible up to $6,000 per spouse that's 65 or older of a new deduction. So a lot of changes in place this year.
Now, what do these details do we need to know? What is it we really need to know?
Yeah, at the end of the day, what folks really need to know is what's going to impact them and making sure they're not leaving anything on the table. And so, what folks need to do right now, if you're ready to file, no reason to wait. In fact, one of the times we see people make mistakes is when they wait to the very end and rush it. But if you're not quite ready, maybe you're waiting for a 1099 or something, is do your homework and get a good idea of how these changes are going to impact you because they're not going to be peanut butter spread evenly across every person. Instead, it's really going to vary. At hrblock.com, we have a calculator, totally free to use, where you can get a really good personalized estimate of what your bottom line is going to look like. That way, up until you do file that tax return, you're making financial decisions with a little more confidence of how much you're going to owe or what your refund's going to look like.
Now, what are some common mistakes people make in filing their taxes?
Absolutely. So I talked about people rushing, but I'll tell you a common mistake we see here at H&R Block people make is that they have life changes and they don't realize those create tax changes and they leave money on the table. Maybe they've gotten married or they bought a home or they had a child and they don't realize there's new credits or deductions for which they're eligible. And so they miss out on that. Another common mistake we make that's really important here early in the year is that each year there's many people that leave millions of dollars on the table in tax refunds because they're not required to file a tax return and they don't, not realizing if they did, they'd actually be due a refund.
Wow. The majority of people file electronically, but do you think it's especially important this year to do it and why?
Absolutely. This is a very important year to file electronically instead of by paper and to make sure you don't make any mistakes that drop your return in what we call special processing at the IRS. Over the last year, there's been a number of changes at the IRS. And one thing we're seeing is that paper tax returns or returns that fall out of kind of the happy path, if you will, and require human review are going to take several weeks, if not longer. And so it's really important that people, one, file electronically and two, get it right So they follow that happy path. And if they're due a refund, they're one of those, 9 in 10 that get it within 21 days. And if you're not sure, it's a really good year to work with a tax professional with all the changes that are coming. You don't want to leave any money on the table, so it may be a good year to seek help, whatever that looks like for you. At H&R Block, you can work with one of our tax professionals. We've got someone within 5 miles of the vast majority of Americans in one of our offices, or you can work with one of our pros without ever leaving the comfort of your home, which is really important as cold as it is this week.
You got that right, Andy. One last question I got to ask you is because you kind of mentioned about human review. Does that mean that when people file, is it either AI or a human that's looking at their form?
Okay, when you submit it to the IRS, if you file electronically, generally that return should just flow through the IRS systems and they have it programmed unless, during the processing, if you will, unless it falls out, they shouldn't have to have a human review it. It's not AI, it's just the way their systems work. Now, later on, the IRS may flag a tax return for audit or exam, but that's after the return has been processed. But for a lot of tax returns, they actually go through the system the way it's programmed without ever a human having to touch them.
Wow, that's interesting. Now,
Yeah.
where can we go for more information?
For more information, including our office hours where you can find one, or our online do-it-yourself options, go to www.hrblock.com.
But speaking with Andy Phillips, Vice President of the Tax Institute at H&R Block, we both made it in from the snow and the cold. Just we can give you this information. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Happy tax season.
Happy tax season to you too. Thank you.